Abraham Zagdoun Chaim's teachings, parashat Tetseh 5780. In parashat Tetseh it says, "You must pay his salary on the same day, and the sun must not set on him." In the book called Sefer HaLikutim, on this parsha, there's a mention of how the Arizal was extremely careful in fulfilling this mitzvah in a very exaggerated way. And there it tells us about how he would even miss praying the mincha prayer on time before sunset if he didn't have the money to pay someone who had worked for him. How he would go from person to person to try and raise money to pay the worker on the same day before sunset. And only afterwards would he be willing to pray. And he would say, "How can I pray to Hashem Yitbarach if I have this mitzvah and I haven't fulfilled it yet?" This whole issue of working, what makes it necessary for people to work for a living, is only the result of a lack of da'at, of awareness, because people lack da'at. And when a person works, he is not aware of the fact that he is now entering inside himself, so to say. He is going into himself in a different form, which is done by performing his job, whereby he is actually rectifying his inner self through the business and workplace interactions that he is doing, each person in his specific profession and livelihood, because there are holy letters within a person's body which are not arranged in their true order. They are not placed where they are supposed to be, and by performing one's job through the negotiations and the interactions and the toil of the work that one does, he is restoring the original arrangement of these letters, for each and every letter to be reset in its proper position and place. This is the issue of the interchanging halls in Lashon HaKodesh called Hechalei Tmurot, mentioned in Likutei Halachot by Rabbi Natan, and on the halachas of morning blessings, chapter 3, section 2, in which, for instance, sometimes different souls get interchanged and switched, and from these halls all kinds of different transformations and changes and switching around of things in the world are derived. And this is why people lack order in their souls, and there is a feeling of confusion and lack of clarity, and this all comes from the lack of da'at, of full awareness and consciousness. When the da'at is confused and mixed up and not settled calmly, and when a person enters a business activity, a negotiation, or has to perform a job or give service, he is then entering his own interchanging halls in order to restore the order therein, because these halls are not something metaphysical and mystic and distanced somewhere out there. These are the person himself, his insides, which are disordered. These interchanging halls, the Hechalei Tmurot, are right there within each person, not in the heavens or in some other world or realm, but rather within the person himself. Everything is within us, even the heavens and the earth referred to in the entire Torah. These are all things that are right inside us, and even if we seem to perceive the sky as if it is above our heads and the earth as if it is beneath our feet, the realm of truth that one can realize when he has the true da'at, the true understanding, is that all of this is just inside us. All of the worlds and realms are inside each person. But since a person does not believe and does not know that he can enter inside himself and to see how his attributes are arranged there, then one has to experience all of this as if it is happening outside. And this is clarified in the second part of the Likutei Moran in Torah 67. It says like this: "There is a tzaddik who is the beauty and the magnificence and the charm of the entire world together. And when this tzaddik who is the beauty and the charm of the whole world, becomes famous and well known in the world, then the eyes of the world open up, and whoever is included within the true charm of this tzaddik, who is the charm and the beauty of the world. In other words, those who come close to him and immerse themselves within him, their eyes open up and they can see, and the main thing is for the person to observe himself. And when one comes close to him, by doing this one should be able to observe himself and all of these attributes, midot, how he is holding with each other. Due to the concealment and disguise of this tzaddik, Yesod Olam, which results in people being unable to observe their true self, then the entire story of creation comes into being. And each person has his own story and narrative. But the truth is that the entire creation is just like different parts and organs of one person. The different components which a person has within himself but cannot yet be seen by himself. And therefore, when a person takes a fruit to eat, he must know that at that moment he is taking within himself a part of himself which is hidden inside him, some particular point of his body, and when he takes this fruit and makes the blessing on it, he is thereby revealing something and rectifying a particular issue which has to be restored within himself. Everything that exists in this world, all of the foods and drinks and all of the business and work and activities of all people, one's clothing and family members and friends and belongings, all of these exist just for a person to be able to reveal the goodness within himself. And all of the trials and tribulations and suffering, all of these diseases and pain coming to a person, chas v'shalom, all come for the same purpose and from the same source, because a person has not yet revealed and organized within himself what has to be restored. And therefore, everything that exists here in this world is coming from the great compassion of Hashem Yitbarach. All of the food and the drinks that a person can make a blessing on, because when a person reveals, for example, that Hashem Yitbarach is connected to a certain piece of fruit by making the blessing on it and eating it, because when the blessing is made, the person is stating that Hashem Yitbarach created this fruit and gave it life. And by mentioning Hashem Yitbarach's name on the fruit, he is thereby reminding himself of Hashem within a specific part of himself. And for example, when a person takes an apple and makes the blessing on it and eats it, he is not aware of the fact that this apple is a letter in the Torah, which has the shape and picture of an apple. And that by making the blessing, the person is restoring this letter to its proper place. All of the worlds and realms of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation are all within each person, within each and every member of the Jewish people, of Am Yisrael. But since people do not have the belief in this reality, so what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He took the person's body and split it up into all of the forms and shapes of all of the different things in the world. For instance, a bottle, an apple, a river, a chair, and everything else in the world. All of these things are transformed and disguised manifestations of the parts of a person's body. And when a person looks outward at the world and everything he sees, he is not aware of the fact that he is actually seeing nothing other than himself. And simple because he does not know this, he has to work to put things back in order. A person must find HaKadosh Baruch Hu within the earth, the earthliness within his body, within the physical world. A person is so used to all of the regular processes happening within himself in this world. Everything seems to be natural and automatic and taken for granted. And this is like what Rabbi Nachman told us in the story of the son of the king and the son of the maidservant, who were exchanged. How the true son of the king was outside the palace, working, herding animals, until he began to chase after the animals. And then the man of the forest appeared and told him to stop chasing. He told the son of the king, stop working, stop chasing after the animals. The work and toil of the son of the king was these animals. Therefore, how can the man of the forest tell him to stop chasing after them, to tell him to stop working? How can he say this kind of thing? This should be impermissible. People absolutely must work for a living. So how can one come and advise someone else to stop working? But the deepest truth is that the whole concept and issue of working for a living is part of our imagination, and a person should rather connect the issue of work to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to connect himself to the nikuda, the point which belongs to his heart at this moment. Because actually having to work for a living is shameful and embarrassing. And Rabbi Nachman explained in Likutei Moran in Torah 34, shame broke my heart, meaning that shame and embarrassment break a person's heart. And the way to rectify and restore this is by connecting one's heart to the nikuda which belongs to his heart at this present moment. And by doing this, the shame which is resting upon his heart is nullified. The shame and embarrassment is having to work, whereby a person has descended and fallen into the aspect of slavery, having to work for his livelihood. And therefore, it is very important to pay a person his salary on time, because when a person has descended into slavery for his livelihood, he has dropped into shame and embarrassment. He is nullifying himself, his independence. He has fallen and has gone to work to receive a bit of life from his work, to receive this nikuda, this particle and point which give him life and force. And therefore, it is imperative to give the employee his salary on time, because each person needs this nikuda which gives him life and vitality. And this nikuda comes through the money, since the payment, the money, is not for his physical existence and for him to have food or the likes, but rather the money and provisions that come to the person in a physical form are actually parts of his soul. And this is his nikuda tova, his particle of goodness. And this nikuda tova was placed outside of the person. It was placed with someone else. It is in another place, and therefore a person has to leave his house and to go to work somewhere else in order to search for and extract from that place, and by his work, his own nikuda, which is within him. This is the issue of the Yechaleh Atmurot, where things are switched and interchanged, and from where this situation is derived. The situation whereby each person has the parts that belong to other people, and each person has to go to all of the places where the different parts of himself are to be found, to go there and to retrieve them. And this process takes place through the business transactions and negotiations, through the employer-employee relationships, and through all of the selling and buying in this world. One person selling and one person buying, one hiring a worker and one working for him, one paying a salary and one receiving. And through all of this, each person is retrieving the nikudot of his goodness, which has been dispersed throughout the entire world. And all of this comes from the Yechaleh Atmurot, as explained by Rabbi Natan in Likutei Halachos, Halachot of the Morning Blessing, chapter 3, section 3. Like this. These interchanges of the Yechaleh Atmurot are changing around all of the time with an infinite number of transformations, and also within each and every person unto himself. The amount of changes and transformations is unlimited and infinite, which take the form of all of the ascents and descents that a person experiences in this world, from the moment of his birth until the day of his death, and all of the incarnations of his soul as it is transferred from generation to generation until the end. All of this is derived from the secret of the Yechaleh Atmurot, from which the secret of the transference and incarnation of the souls is derived, whereby HaKadosh Baruch Hu troubles himself to transfer the souls through many different stages and incarnations in order to cleanse them of the aspect of the Yechaleh Atmurot. This explains the great and immense importance of tzedakah, because tzedakah is a great chesed for a person, a great revelation of compassion. By tzedakah, a person who did not work and did not do all of the things that he had to do in this world in order to find and collect and retrieve all of the parts of his soul which were dispersed through the world. Even so, there is another way. There is tzedakah. A person can receive tzedakah, and by the means of charity, all of the parts which belong to him can come back to him, even if he did not toil for them. In the end, the great tzaddik will come to return everyone to their true home, to their real place and wholeness. And this is what the prophet Zechariah meant in chapter 43, and I will whistle to them, and I will assemble to them. The great tzaddik will come in the end, and all he will have to do will be to whistle and to make sounds with his mouth. And then everyone will hear him and come together with him and will return to their true homes. And regarding this, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said, as brought in the book of Chaim Moran, in section 603, a parable. There is one bird who lays a great number of eggs, such an immense amount of eggs that this bird cannot sit on all of them to have them grow into birds. And Hashem Yitbarach induced into the nature of this bird the inclination to be sneaky and to cunningly lay some of its eggs in other birds' nests, and some other of its eggs in the nest of other birds, and others in the nest of other birds. And these other birds are not aware that the eggs that they are tending to are not their own, and they sit on the eggs until they hatch. And from there, new birds develop, and the original bird itself sits on a few of its own eggs until new birds hatch from them. And then this bird flies up into the sky with its offspring and starts to chirp. And then all of the other birds that grew up with other birds hear these chirps, and they recognize the sounds, and they are drawn immediately to the first bird from which they all originated. And then they all come back to him.